Members of the public, this is just an alert that the 3 o'clock committee of the whole meeting will begin shortly. We are running just slightly behind schedule. Once again, for the members of the public in attendance and listening at home, the 3 o'clock committee of the whole meeting will begin shortly. Thank you.
Good afternoon. We are calling the St. Louis County Council Committee of the Whole to order. We will be looking at departmental hearings. That's the budget hearings today. It is October 12th, 2021. The hour is now 3:10. Mr. Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Days,
Here.
Councilmember Dunaway,
Present.
Councilmember Fitch,
Here.
Councilmember Webb, Councilmember Clancy,
Here.
Councilmember Tracus, Councilmember Harder.
Here.
Madam Chair, you have a quorum.
Thank you very much. The committee takes official notice of and admits into evidence all St. Louis County ordinances and resolutions. We are going to be looking at the proposed budgets of the Spirit of St. Louis Airport, as well as the Department of Planning, looking at their 2022 budgets. So let's see how we're going to do this in first. I think, Mr. Bales, you're going to come and give us your presentation. You didn't have anything for us, no papers, no PowerPoint, no nothing?
No, been here for so many years. We used to do it in there and got in trouble for doing a PowerPoint.
Oh, okay.
But I can get
All right.
all the handouts you like. Well,
Madam Chair,
council members,
I'm
excuse
sorry.
me, Madam, just for the record, could we have all presenters just state their name and position?
In position. Thank you.
thank you. My name is John Bales. I'm the Director of Aviation, Spirit of St. Louis Airport for St. Louis County. I brought along with me Nick Degler, who's our Manager of Administrative Services. And Spirit of St. Louis Airport, just a little background on it. Some of you know, some of you don't. But it was opened in 1964, and it was the world's largest privately owned airport. The county acquired it in 1980 with a grant from the FAA. The FAA paid 90%. The county paid 10%. Bringing that forward to today, there's nearly 3,000 people employed at the airport and quality jobs. Our annual economic impact is $400 million annually. It's come a long way. It's an underappreciated asset, I believe, in the county, but it creates a lot of jobs and a lot of business. The mission statement of the airport is to provide a safe, efficient, dependable, and attractive first-class public facility that professionally serves the users and tenants. The airport strives to maintain its role as a major transportation facility for the St. Louis region while continuing to be a responsive and responsible neighbor to the surrounding community. For my budget overview, the 2022 recommended budget for Spirit of St. Louis Airport is $23,238,149. That's an increase of $1,956,143, or 9.2%. Personnel cost of our budget, we're talking about it earlier, is 6.6% of our budget only. We have 24 positions that equates to 18.6 full-time equivalents. The operating expenses are 92.1%, and our capital expenses for this recommended budget are 1.3%. The core business functions of the airport, Spirit is a federally aviation air carrier certificated airport and is responsible for the management of, one of the most important to me is the self-supporting enterprise fund, which raises its income through jet fuel and real estate development. We also are responsible for maintaining a 7,485-foot all-weather runway, 5,000-foot parallel precision instrument landing system. We have an FAA control tower. We do have a 24-hour customs service, which we opened earlier this year. I've talked to Councilman Harder about getting you guys out there for ribbon cutting, but the federal government still is, they're only taking passengers in there. But it's a beautiful facility. Prior to COVID, we were having about one international flight a day, which is a large amount for an airport of Spirit's size, probably the top in the region. After COVID, a lot of the corporations still are not flying internationally. Some are, but it's starting to pick up. And we also have 24-hour police service. We contract with St. Louis County Police, just like Wildwood. So we pay for their services and we appreciate their services. And then we have 24-hour aircraft rescue firefighting. We have our own truck and our guys are trained, but we also have an agreement with Monarch Fire Protection just down the street. Our organizational chart is fairly simple, so I'll go through it a little kind of quick. I'm the director of aviation. I have an executive secretary, which is also our procurement specialist, which is also our almost everything else specialist. I have a deputy director of aviation, the manager of administrative services, an accountant two, the airport police, airport maintenance manager, airport maintenance foreman, airport maintenance lead, 6 workers, an auto mechanic 3, auto mechanic 2, and an airport engineer. Our performance measures are different than most departments, obviously. Takeoffs and landings. We estimated in 2021 we'd have 100,000. I talked to Paul Kreidler earlier. Before the final budget book goes out, we're going to have to revise that. The numbers came up much higher than we thought after COVID, so we're at least 20,000 ahead of that right now, which is a good thing. The number of operations, while it's important, it gives us a higher priority with MoDOT and the FAA for grant funding. Fuel sales is another one. We budgeted 6,500, and I'll touch on that later. Number of base aircraft, we're about 322 right now. Occupied versus available tenant space. 2021, when I sent this report in, it was 99%. I'm proud to say right now it's 100% with a waiting list. Number of noise complaints, when I sent this in, we're at 30, and the last several years have been historically low. We've been very aggressive with our noise abatement program. We have a contract with the City of St. Louis Lambert International, so we have a hotline, and people can call in and give their address and the time. They run a detailed report, how high the airplane was, what time it was, and myself or the deputy always follows up with the citizens because we want them to understand and appreciate the airport, and we're part of their community also. And if it's something a pilot or a controller did, we'll reach out to them. If it's not, we go back. Sometimes the citizens you might be confused. So we explain to them, I thought they weren't supposed to fly over my house, or they're supposed to fly in 40. And we try to, in a polite way, explain how it is. So it's doing all that has really lowered our noise complaints. Of course, we receive grant funding from the FAA and MoDOT. Missouri's a block grant state. So all the funds from the federal funds go to MoDOT and then through projects, except for the air carrier airports. And I'm not going to go into a whole lot of CARES projects and ARPA, but the airports are completely broke out. That money comes from the FAA. It's broken out by air carrier size and airport size. So we do not accept, we're not involved with the county's overall CARES money. So it's helped a little bit. We got, Spirit is the highest rated general aviation airport. We had 157,000. In turn, Lambert got 56 million. However, normally that really bothers me, but the air carrier airports suffered so much more than the business aviation airports. because the airlines just weren't flying. They had to give money to the car rental, all of their other vendors. So, we should be happy that we got the highest rated of a general aviation airport. Employee turnover, 2021 was pretty high, higher than we normally do, 13%. But I had several 30-plus year employees that after COVID hit, one of them was my engineer, and he said, you know what, I'm 67 years old. I want to travel and enjoy while I'm healthy, and this just scared me. So, I understand that completely. Salaries compared to industry standards, we're at least 10% behind. I mean, there was a time when St. Louis County and Spirit was higher, but we're not right now. But we're getting, personnel's done a great job in trying to get things through, and I appreciate what you guys do. Filled versus vacant positions. We're at 91% when I submitted this form. We're at 100% today, and I'll touch on that a little bit later. Our strategic priorities, the airport strives to support all the county executives' priority areas, following the values of transparency, accountability, and ethical standards. However, the following are emphasized: to promote inclusive development throughout the county, improve quality of life, rebuild pride and optimism, improve effective county services, and ensure services are efficient and responsible. So our priority areas, as I touched on, to remain self-supporting enterprise fund. Second priority is continue a land acquisition program, which you guys have approved several of those, but just to recap what it is when the airport was first developed, 343 of the 1,250 acres were acquired through 99-year land leases. And that was either because the founder didn't have the funds, but more likely the farmer's family didn't want to sell. So we pay them quarterly. We have control. The county has control of that ground. Unfortunately, some of it's under runways, taxiways, and the closer we get to the end of that, it's been a priority of mine for several years. If we got to the end of the 50-year life, the county and the FAA you'd be paying current real estate value. Right now, if somebody bought it, they couldn't do anything with it for 50 years. So the first piece I bought was cheaper, and as long we go, it goes down a little bit. But that's a big priority for me in my career. It's not a fun one, though, I'll tell you. Develop and lease available airport real estate with increased promotion and marketing. This provides increased revenue and obviously economic development opportunities, creating jobs for St. Louis County. Second priority is increased public relation activities to educate the community on the great asset that Spirit of St. Louis is for St. Louis County and the region. And obviously, the last one is increased flight traffic and fuel sales. As I said earlier, the recommended budget is $23,238,149. When I said we were fully staffed, we had an airport engineer and auto mechanic too. When you hear from transportation, finding mechanics is almost impossible. My mechanic lives in Silex, Missouri, and he's awesome. He's an incredible mechanic, but he couldn't get benefits there. And we had nobody in the region that was qualified to work on the heavy equipment wanted to take the job. So I was appreciative. The engineer search was also a little tough. And I don't believe in stealing, but we got a guy from transportation, has no aviation experience, but we got to know him when they were doing the Chesville Airport Road project. And he's been with the county 9 years, young man. And he wanted to come out and see what it had. So he's doing excellent so far. My staff, Merit staff, is very happy and appreciative that they were able to get a long time waiting raise. And they appreciated the fact that we did it on merit value. So, the better employees, at least we had to stick within that number, but they still appreciated the fact that they were distinguished from people that certain employees that are really hard workers and some are just average. And that's the way it is. So they appreciated that system. As I said, all of the county-owned buildings and hangars are 100% occupied. We do have a waiting list. The $5 million in fuel increase in fuel purchase compared to 2021. So going from 19 to 20, there was a 27% decrease. That was due to COVID, obviously. But 27% is very strong for our industry. Much people saw, some of their carriers saw 90% drops. So we were able to keep things moving through a lot of charter flights. $19 million in fuel purchase for 2019 was down to $7 million in 2020. If I saw that number and that big of a drop, I would have probably passed out or got sick to my stomach. But realizing not only COVID, but the demand, common economics, the demand was down, so the volumes went down. and the prices dropped incredibly because the airlines buy the most fuel. Nobody was buying fuel. So that in itself really lowered our budget, our purchases. 9.5 million budget for 2021. It's currently on pace for 11 to 12 million. That's the reason I had come to you with the $3 million request for the appropriation. That money comes out of the Airport Enterprise Fund. It's very important to note that money is in turn sold for a profit. And we are contractually obligated. This has happened to me 3 times in my career, and every time it was because we had increased sales. And right now with increased sales, we're having increased pricing. So when what we budgeted on last year, it was really hard to pick. We have some let me see. So the average fuel price just for this time last year is 55 to 65 cents higher a gallon. An average airplane could buy 3,000 to 5,000 gallons. So that adds up. We also have the air show, which I'll touch on later in June. And air show years always increase the volumes of fuel. Every year, it's without a doubt. We do have some postponed projects from 21 included in the 22 budget. I'm only going to touch on the big ones for your time. North runway widening and overlay design work. That one was really pushed back because of MoDOT. They just weren't prepared to move forward and didn't have the funding. They were dealing with all the CARES stuff. Edison Complex asphalt repair. That was a lower priority, and I wanted our guys to work on others, but we're going to go ahead and do that one. We need to keep our parking lots in good shape because those are the tenants that it's an office complex, and we make a lot of money off of that. So if I have potholes, West Hangar paving, that's just maintaining quality buildings and keep them from rusting, and an elevator modernization. And we didn't do it last year, quite frankly, because that building, it's used for training, and there are steps. And the elevator got inspected and it was considered duly safe. And so it wasn't being used. So we pushed that one back this year. I touched on the 9-year land lease acquisitions. This year we had our largest purchase ever, $3.9 million. So I will not be pursuing one in 2022. And the reason for that is when we first purchased the original parcel, go through the FA process, the negotiation, the appraisal. And then when we set on a price, but the FA lags a year to 2 in reimbursing us our partial. So I purchased that with reserves that the airport has. So we don't have to bond, we don't have to borrow. And for me, it's a smart business thing. Then when that grant money comes in, we go to the next priority. So spending the biggest chunk I've had was 3.9. I'm going to sit on it till we get some money back. We have a couple large construction projects, an airport drainage system restoration. That's 597,000 construction, 59 design. Airport is in the floodplain. It's very flat. The ditches don't flow and get cleaned out. We did this after the flood in '93. Airport maintenance guys have done a tremendous staff maintaining it. But over the years and with the development on the hill, it's starting to silt in, creating wildlife attractants. It's getting to the point where our equipment can't get into it. So we're going to do that project. Also, a safety issue with attracting of wildlife. Then we have a main runway joint and spall repair. That's a 675,000 construction, 67,000 design. That is our main runway. That's our life and blood. If that runway goes down, we're in big trouble. And runways like highways and everything else have limited lifespan, and we're giving it loving care to make sure that we can get an extra 5 or 10 out of it before we have to completely replace it. So, and it's absolutely necessary. And that is that's a grant project. So that's going to be reimbursed at 90%. And then we have just a couple vehicles. We have a tow behind runway broom that you might not have seen in the past. It's $205,000. It's a very unique airport specific piece of equipment. And it's pulled behind a large truck. So we have the plows like the highway department does, but a runway, you've got to keep almost dry and bare. You can't have slush and things like that. So that's a safety. And then finally, we have a new fuel billing software program. Majority of that was purchased in the 2021 at 145. The cost and maintenance and hosting at 2022 is 44. And that's a software program when we take the fuel wholesale, when the buyers come to get it, they swipe a card and they're not paying with that card, but it's monitoring how much fuel they actually took, the temperature of the fuel, the expansion, and the actual price. That goes to software. The accounting guys have to work on it. The one we have now is on its last legs, and I have to give a shout out to IT. They responded, and it's not typical stuff they work with, but they got it up and running. So I appreciate their cooperation. Then I got a couple of quick things, because I know you guys are gonna have a long day. As far as community engagement goes, we do the Spirit of St. Louis Air Show and STEM Expo. You guys all know what that is. Most of you have been there. That's a big focus on science, technology, engineering, and math. It's going to be in June. And you do have the Blue Angels. And typically, we would invite all the school districts from Ferguson to South Glenburg to West County, about 800 kids, and they would have a field trip, and they would come out the day before the air show because a lot of them couldn't afford to get there or didn't have transportation. So they'd come on the bus. We can't do that this year because it's in June. So what we're going to do is reach out to the school districts and offer them free tickets for certain, disperse them evenly to the schools that want them. Some of them don't want them. I mean, like Rockwood is participating in our STEM, and they, I'll be honest, superintendent says, give them to a district for a kid that can't get here. We can get here. Then one last thing that really small, but it was one of the cooler things I've been able to do in my career. There's a program called the Red Tail Cadet Program, and it's based off of the Tuskegee Airmen. And a quick story is there's a church right by the airport called the Crossings, and two pastors were on a mission trip in Africa. One of them was Anthony. He was an African-American gentleman, and they got on this small airplane taking off a dirt strip, and he'd never really been in a plane like that. And he looked up at the pilots, and the other pastor happened to be a pilot, and he said, do they know what they're doing? He's like, yeah, they know what they're doing. And he's like, wow. Gets off the airplane. He goes up to talk to him. And they said, you don't have an African accent. Where are you from? And he said, Ferguson. I mean, he said St. Louis. I screwed that up. He said St. Louis. And they immediately responded, Ferguson. And he said, that took me back that even in Africa. So he got talking to these young men and said, how'd you learn to fly? They said, well, they lived in the bush. And the smart kids, if you will, their parents all wanted them to be doctors. And so the country sends them to school. They had their head in the sky. They wanted to be pilots. So they went to South America, learned to fly. Anthony said, if we can teach two guys in Africa that come out of the bush to fly, we can teach kids in Ferguson. So the church started raising money. They went to the superintendent of Ferguson. Then they came to me in our flight school, and we partnered. And we put 6 kids from different Ferguson high schools, gave them the flight gear, the glasses, and put them through an extensive training program to get them to solo. 4 of the kids soloed. But when they came out, they would come out Monday morning, wheels up, and they'd land and they'd go to ground school in a building that I donated. And then they'd have lunch, and then they would go to ground school again. And then at night have dinner, but they stayed in a hotel, and that's all paid for. But at the hotel, they didn't want them out there just having a good time. So they had classes, life skills, financial responsibility, how to deal with credit, how to deal with everything. And the kids really, I mean, they were 6 special kids. They just didn't say anybody wants to sign up. And it was great. And they were very appreciative. They got their faces on posters. They're going to be at the air show trying to grow this. And we're trying to raise money to get them to get to their private license. And Boeing found out about it and has jumped on board. So it's a good success program. Most people don't realize that we get out in the community. And we also work on a lot of education, aviation scholarships. Finally, I'll say, if any of you would like to come see the airport, or if your age want to come, I'm always welcoming. I think it's a hidden jewel. And also we have the Metro Air Support unit there, which is a great part of seeing the airport. And if you've had any questions about the budget or the airport or anything else that I can answer, appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Questions for Mr. Bales? Councilman Fitch?
Thank you, Madam Chair. John, 9.2% increase over last year, right? Is that what I heard you
Yes,
say?
sir.
Does that include any additional positions, or is that?
No.
Is that just salary and fuel costs and all that?
It's really all fuel costs.
Is it?
It's $1.9 million. Is almost 100% fuel.
And your turnover, where are you losing them to? That 13% turnover, where are they going?
They're all retiring.
Oh, that's all 100%
They're all
retired?
over 60.
Okay, got it.
So
Okay.
they've been with us a long time.
And do you have any political appointees in your budget?
Just me.
Okay, so you serve at the pleasure of the county executive?
Yes, sir.
Okay, all right. That's all I have, Madam Chair.
And one more thing for you,
Yeah.
Councilman Fitch.
Yeah.
And one of the previous budget hearings you mentioned, and was true, and I never really thought about it, that, hey, when you go into county parks, you see St. Louis County. and
Right, the
Spirit.
signage, right.
So we have a sign, rather than us going out and put metal signs like, the highway department type signs, We have a signing project because we're upgrading all of our directional signs around the airport, you'll see. And so part of that project is we're going to put the county logo in St. Louis County on there. So I didn't know if you remembered that, but
Yeah, I do. I didn't remember it till you said it, but it's been a while since I've been out there.
yeah,
so.
well, I didn't want the signs really needed a lot of work, and I didn't want to go out and spend money for signs. And then, so it's a full-blown project. It's
Yeah.
in procurement right now.
Mhm.
It's about a $50,000 project, so it'll look nice.
And that's one of those things where I said, we don't get credit for owning that airport.
Right.
You know, nobody knows that
Right.
St. Louis County, very few people know that St. Louis County actually owns that
Right.
airport. So thank you for doing that. Thanks
Sure.
for following up on that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Harder?
Yes. John, on the gas, have we picked up any other or bigger purchasers than we've had before? I know we had the Navy
Oh,
for
yeah.
a while and others.
So we have still a ton of military. And that's one of the ones that I really have to work with the pilots, with the controllers, because they're loud. A lot of people love seeing them, some don't. So we work taking them over to the valley. We have a bunch of those. The charter operators did really, really well. So we had charters that we hadn't because people that may have means not necessarily to own their own airplane or would maybe not fly privately, they were flying their grandkids in, from all over during COVID, just because they're on that one airplane. So we picked up that. There's 3 or 4 operations that one of my tenants working on right now, bringing in the hospital, which hospital? It's not Mercy, the one that Cardinal Glennon's in.
SSM.
SSM, yeah. So they have all their helicopters and they fly out of Industrial Park and they're looking at coming in and adding those. We picked up this came from Lambert. They used to, this is a really strange thing. I don't really get it, but I'm happy to have them. They fly these really expensive dogs. People order dogs and they were flying them on airplanes to their destination. And one in the airlines, they're in the cargo hub. And these people were spending thousands on their dog. It's called the puppy spot. And we pick them up and they have an air conditioned hangar for all the puppies to play in before they get on the airplane. And it's a pretty big size airplane. Come in, it's got a dog nose and dog tail on it. And so that was a good addition because they're flying every day. Only thing we really lost, which was huge, was the Bear Monsanto acquisition. And that building, they put it up for auction. And they did not get what they wanted. So they got one offer and they denied it. They're still paying us rent, a lot of rent. They then went out for typical real estate. They still didn't get what they wanted. So I've worked with them and said, you can continue to own that and be a passive landlord. And I have one of my FBOs manage it because they don't want to put the capital in, but then they could fill it up with airplanes. Nestle is doing great. They're flying a lot. Added a big global. A couple other companies have added bigger airplanes. So, we're growing some of it. Cargo is we're not a typical. We have a lot of cargo going on at night, but it's like Quest Labs type of stuff and kind of beat up old smaller airplanes, but they're flying every night. But the biggest cargo we really get is when the GM plant in Wentzville, a line will go down for maintenance. So for a widget, let's say, and then we'll have DC-9 big airplanes coming in. So a week or 2 ago, we had 3 or 4 of them come in. Had a 727. I hadn't seen one of those in years. We had picked up 2 C-130s because they're going to do a flyover at the Mizzou game. Columbia Airport's a little restricted. Plus, there's a lot more to do in Chesterfield and St. Louis County for the pilots after they fly back. So we're working all that. Our military has really increased a lot. So we're looking at new businesses every day. I was impressed how fast we come back, and I think we'll do even better next year. It's really hard to predict how much the fuel prices will change. I mean, they went down so low, incredibly low, probably 40 years low in COVID, but they came back because when that demand came back, prices were coming back. So we're selling a lot of fuel. We've got a few minor regulations that the state's getting involved with preset meters and things that you got to jump through hoops to be, regulatory. But other than that, no, business is good.
On the STEM for the air show,
Yes, sir.
do you know roughly how much is in that fund to fund STEM programs in the school. You know, you raise money every 2 years on an air show and it goes in that fund and then people can get money out of that fund, correct?
Not exactly.
Okay.
So the Air Show is a 501c3 and that it's on county property. I happen to be the president of it. And the reason we do that, it protects the county from exposure and liability. So the Air Show, when we raise money, it, you know, there was several years where we couldn't do anything because it costs you $1 million to put on an air show. And if it rains out, I still got to pay for all the hotel rooms, everything else. So certain years we'll take it, but we're supporting STEM programs, but it's not a steady like, okay, here's your donation. Now, when we close it out, the board will vote on which program it'll go to. The old air show used to go to Children's Miracle Network. So right now we're looking at, we had to make a lot of improvements to the grounds, and quite frankly, they're building a lot of houses on the ridge, and some of them may impact our safety zone. So after 2022, I'll have to get back with you, because if you can't, if you don't have the space, that's the reason they don't do jet teams down on the river, because the casinos and everything are just too tight. So, but we do support a lot of STEM programs individually. Right now, we're kind of picking out, I mean, like this Red Cadet program, other STEM programs for science. We supported some SLU stuff, but it's not, it's not every other year or anything like that. It just depends on where we're at. And so this year, you know, we've hired a professional parking company because that's what we always get beat up on. And the county highway department agreed that they're just going to manage the lights and the flow, because they just don't have the manpower anymore like they used to. So, but we appreciate them in the health department and everybody else.
Okay, thank you.
John, you mentioned your reserve. How much do you have in reserve?
About 19 million. And if you take out fuel, so because remember, when we sell gas, we make money.
Mhm.
Our operating budget's about 5 million. Now, is that 19 million since we paid for the 3.9, or is that out? I believe it's still. So, and I'm not, it's my staff, it's the model that I inherited. I'm not saying this for pat my back, but when I took over in 2007, we had 8 million. And it's 2021. Some years we make some money. Now, there are years where you look at our books and we lost money, but those are the years that when we went and purchased a big piece of property, and then the year you get the money back from the FA, you look like a hero. But averaging about $1 million a year profit.
And so 19 million is a pretty good reserve for your operation.
Yes, it is.
Okay.
The one thing about our operation is, even more so than that. I mean, you know, you go to the aircare airports, it's a crazy amount of money, but they also have $500 million worth of debt service. We have absolutely no debt. Then there's other airports that are like us, and they get these federal government finance awards, and you look at it and they have a tax, you know, that they're getting from the general public. And I'm like, we don't do that. So I'm very, you know, the FA wants you to have sufficient funds, and they want you to be self-supporting, but they don't want you to have too much. And the reason being is, and that's the reason I have a compliance manual that's this thick. And over the years, a few administrations have said, hey, can we do this with some of your money? It's protected. It has to go back, because a lot of that money is made off, and all the taxes are made off of jet fuel sales. So it's got to go back into the airport operation. And that's called revenue diversion, because there have been cities that tried to do that. And so anyway, I mean, I've pulled it out and showed a couple of county executives in the past and say, no, this is why, and they agreed. So it's a good program. You know, I don't think your average citizen would appreciate if they had to support what they would think is a rich guy's airport. But I can tell you, it's much more than that. I mean, if you go out there, it's the business. We have life flights probably 4 a day, you know, coming in. You hear ambulances, my ears perk up when I hear fire trucks. Now I know the difference between a fire truck and an ambulance and a police car. And they're going because St. Louis has so much great medical technology, and people are coming in for all kinds of things and flying in air ambulances, basically. And then we're also flying a lot of organs in for transplants. So those are a lot of things. And then we have, in addition to Metro Air Support, we have other federal agencies out there that use the airport also. So it's well-rounded, and it's used the way it should be.
Well, I do appreciate your interest in Ferguson Florissant School District. I have other school districts, which is in my district, by the way, and other school districts, high schools that might be interested in that. And so I'd like to have a conversation with you about some of that. Not to overwhelm the system, but I do understand
No,
the
and
sensitivity of it. But
so they picked Ferguson because that in Africa, he said Ferguson.
mhm.
And so the church is the driving force behind this. However, they're having those young people come to the air show to meet other young people. And then what they're going to do is they're going to be mentors and go around to different schools and try to get people interested, because a lot of these kids have never even seen a small airplane. They don't even know what it is. And
That would be helpful.
it was really, really well done. I have a very small piece in it, but I'm supporting it and helping, trying to raise money for it, because I think it's an outstanding program. And, also we need pilots, we need mechanics. The two of the people that didn't solo, one just wasn't quite ready. And then there was a young lady, and she wants to be an air traffic controller.
Mhm.
And she said, I don't feel comfortable going to plane by myself. She just didn't. But she got to go, while she was there, she got to go see behind the scenes air traffic control. And that's really, it's, the mindset she has. So if you can reach any kids, I think it's a great thing for us. And we do a lot of tours, and reaching out in the community. And I can go on forever, shut up. But after the air show, I got a call from a little entrepreneur, Girl Scout. And she said, would you like to buy some cookies for the troops? And I'm like, what's your name? Have your mom send me an email. And her mom called first and said, hey, my daughter, can she speak with you? And so our air show board met, and the first year we bought 175 cases. So that girl got to like camp for free for 10 years.
Forever.
And we sent some to Fort Leonard Wood, which was very much appreciated. And then we sent one to C-130 base. And that young lady, she used to be called Captain Kate. Now she's Major Kate. And she was at our air show, our old air show, and with her dad. And she said, and I met her, and she was awesome. She worked with the kids better than most pilots. And she grew up somewhere in St. Louis County. And she said, my dad was there, and they had a female aerobatic pilot. She said, Daddy, girls can fly. And so now she's a major in the Air Force. So because she reached out to our kids, I mean, the pilots are there, but some of them are more. She went to schools, she did everything. So her troops got them too.
Yeah. It's just a matter of exposure to many.
Oh yeah,
It's
and I
in
mean,
that community.
it's
They just you don't know what you don't know, and so
yes,
having
ma'am.
someone to do that is very good. Let me see if there are any other questions. Councilwoman Dunaway, anyone else have any questions for Mr. Bales? All right. Well, thank you so very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it, and
I appreciate all your
we'll be
support.
talking.
You
Absolutely.
guys have a good day.
Now, I guess we'll see if we have any public comments for this one. Okay, we have none, so we're moving right along to planning.
Madam Chair, do we have to wait till 4 o'clock, or can we just keep going? Is that the
4
idea?
o'clock for what?
For planning, I thought,
Noticed, I think.
No, it's noticed. We have here 3,
is it in there?
Spirit of St. Louis and Department of Planning.
Okay,
So we're
good.
good.
Yep, they were both
Mickey, are
not-
we good?
Yes, they were both noticed up for.
All
Okay,
right.
good.
Thank you. Are you, Mr. Trumbull?
Yes.
Are they talking to you?
Oh, I apologize. Yes, please.
Let me know when you're ready.
Sure. Is the council able to see the presentation that I have on my computer? Oh, they printed it
Same
out
one?
for you.
Yes, that's why we like to get them in.
I see. It's appeared on the,
I don't see it.
It was in your email. It's blue. You got it?
I can see it now.
All right, thank you. So, Mr. Trumbull, please.
Madam
proceed.
Chair, council members, my name is Jacob Trimble. I am the acting director of the County Department of Planning. And I come before you this afternoon to discuss the operations of the planning department and to discuss our 2022 budget request. So what is our mission? What is it that the planning department seeks to do at a very high level? Well, we seek to foster healthy communities by guiding development and reinvestment, developing long-range plans, promoting citizen engagement, and using data and information technology to guide public policy. So that's just a few words to describe a lot of big ideas. So how do we live out this vision? How do we live out this mission for ensuring that we bring the best services to the residents of St. Louis County? We do have a set of strategic priorities that we do attempt to meet. We want to improve customer service. That includes not only residents, but our customers are also engineers, developers, and residents who have questions about any sorts of development and land use questions, subdivision questions, anything of that nature in unincorporated St. Louis County. So we seek to engage the public through the planning and development process so that it's very transparent and that everyone is informed of decisions and how decisions are made so that their voices can be made clear throughout the decision-making process. We seek to promote housing and neighborhood options by developing attractive neighborhoods and improving the ability of residents to age in place. In 2015, the county received plenty of accolades from national organizations for when the county, and it was spearheaded through the Department of Planning, completed the St. Louis County Age-Friendly Community Action Plan. So that was conducted in 2015 that seeks to assist with residents as we get older. What does it mean to be able to age in place? Age in your home, but also age in your community. It's a sort of a nesting sort of ideas. We want to help in the reinvestment in places and spaces by supporting redevelopment of obsolete commercial corridors, create safe communities with access to goods and services. So we're always looking at national trends in terms of what is going on nationally, economically, that's going to affect land use decisions and land use questions. So nationally, we're seeing big questions of what happens to large regional malls. We have those sorts of questions right here in St. Louis County. What happens to big box stores that have been vacated by Kmart's and Sears? What do we do about those? How do we redevelop these types of spaces to be active, useful, and economically vibrant again? And how do we promote sustainable development in the county? We promote sustainable development by researching land use best practices around the nation and implementing regulations to reduce climate and other environmental impacts of development. So that is sort of our strategic priorities. So then going down even another level, what are some of our core business functions? What is it day-to-day that your planning department is doing to make this happen? Well, one, we administer the zoning ordinance and the subdivision ordinance. The zoning ordinance is chapter 1003 and the subdivision ordinance is chapter 1005 of the county's revised ordinances. Sandwiched in between there's chapter 1004, which governs the Board of Zoning Adjustment, which is a board that's housed in the Department of Planning. So what does administration of these two documents look like? Well, before I get to what that looks like, I want, if you will indulge me, to read you the purposes out of these ordinances, what they actually say they're intended to do. The zoning ordinance has been adopted to promote the health, safety, morals, comfort, and general welfare, to secure economic and coordinated land use, and to facilitate the adequate provision of public improvements. The subdivision ordinance has a slightly longer preamble. The purpose of this chapter is to control the division of land within unincorporated areas of St. Louis County in order to promote public health, safety, and general welfare of the county by regulating the division and redivision of land in order to lessen congestion in the streets and highways, to further the orderly development and appropriate use of land, to establish accurate records of land subdivision, to protect land title, to implement the general plan, to secure safety from fire and other dangers, to facilitate adequate and coordinated provisions for transportation, water, sewage, schools, parks, playgrounds, and other public requirements, to facilitate the further division of larger tracts into smaller tracts of land, to preserve natural features such as stands of trees, streams, significant rock formations, historical landmarks, and in general, to facilitate the orderly, coordinated, efficient, and economic development of unincorporated portions of St. Louis County. So how do we do that? What does your planning staff do? So to administer the zoning ordinance, the main day-to-day option or main day-to-day task that planning staff does is they review site development plans. So whenever a development is occurring in unincorporated portions of St. Louis County, there is a site development plan to ensure that the development meets all the codes and criteria of the zoning ordinance and any sort of other related codes. Additionally, we also administer the subdivision ordinance. So similarly, we have plats of land. So the subdivision ordinance is reviewing the documents that legally subdivides or changes property lines in unincorporated St. Louis County. So sort of relatedly, we are the staff to the Planning Commission. So the Planning Department is the house of the 9-member Planning Commission. And the Planning Commission is made up of appointees by the county executive who are then confirmed by the county council. And it is their job and responsibility of the Planning Commission to make recommendations pertaining to all planning and zoning related matters in unincorporated St. Louis County. So we operate as their staff. We facilitate their processes, we facilitate their public hearings. When they have actions their reports, we as their staff will draft their reports. And those reports then will trickle their way down to this body for action after the commission has made its recommendations. Similarly, we are the staff to the Board of Zoning Adjustment. And the Board of Zoning Adjustment is a 3-member body that hears requests to variances to the zoning ordinance, really a strict interpretation of the zoning ordinance. And what it is that a resident or a business comes to the Board of Zoning Adjustment and requests some form of administrative relief for usually very minor things. The Board of Zoning Adjustment can really only have limited authority and limited power to vary from the zoning ordinance. So typical things that you would see in front of the Board of Zoning Adjustment would be requests to put decks and setbacks, requests to put pools and setbacks. From a business perspective, the most typical and common one that we see is a request to put freestanding signs closer to the right of way than is permitted. So putting it in their front yard setbacks or sign size. So that's really what the Board of Zoning Adjustment is intended to do. Additionally, this department does monitor all annexation and boundary change requests that are taken and put to the St. Louis County Boundary Commission. So the Boundary Commission is a commission that is a creation of the state. It is 11 members in size, 1/3 of which are appointed by the county executive, 1/3 of which are appointed by the municipal league, and the other third are appointed through a joint appointment process by the county executive and the municipal league. And so this department, whenever a municipality in the county seeks to annex a portion of unincorporated St. Louis County, we review those plans of intent. They are required, and there's a pretty stringent sort of set of rules through state statute. They have to produce a document, submit that to the Boundary Commission, and then the county gets to respond to that plan of intent. And this department is the department that reviews those, produces an in-depth analysis, looking at tax rates, how it would affect the provision of services, and things of that nature. So some of the recent actions we've looked at, the Boundary Commission, it also looks at disincorporations, consolidations. The most recent disincorporation was the village of McKinsey. That was a few years ago. The most recent unsuccessful disincorporation was the village of Hanley Hills. That was also just a few years ago. The most recent approved consolidation was Veneta Park and Veneta Terrace, and that also occurred just a couple years ago. So we also have comments on any of those types of actions that occur before the Boundary Commission. So we also process requests for change in zoning and special procedure. So that is we shepherd those processes through the Planning Commission. That is a change in request for a change in zoning or a change for a special procedure that can include conditional use permits. That can include C8 planned commercial districts, M3 planned industrial districts, and PEU planned environment unit districts, which are residential planned districts. And then those documents all filter the way back down to the council for one form of action or another after the commission has made their recommendations. Another action that this department does is we manage the escrows for major land disturbances and for subdivisions. So when a major land disturbance is kicked into effect in the county, when more than 1 acre of land is to be disturbed. And the definition of disturbance is if you are starting to tear up the root zone. So if you have an acre or more in size and you want to recontour the land, regrade the land for whatever your purposes are, typically connected to some form of development request, you are required to put up a certain amount of monies based on formula to ensure that you conduct and do your grading to code and to standards. So this department, we facilitate the collection of all of those monies. We calculate those amounts. We work with the treasurer's office, and also with the county counselor's office to ensure that those agreements are signed completely, that they are watertight, and that we collect those funds. Those funds are only released back to a developer subsequent to completion of any sort of grading process. And so they have to make sure that the county makes sure that those escrows are collected and properly sort of dispersed back. Similarly, we do the same thing for subdivisions. So an example of a project that we're working on now would be in the 5th Council District, the Preserve subdivision. So they have gone through multiple steps in their process. They've got their site development plan approved. They've gone through the planning commission process. Now, the next step in the process is they are submitting the record plat, which is the actual document that will subdivide the land into the nearly 200 single-family detached homes, the common grounds, platting their streets. As part of that process, we then also will calculate the value of public improvements, and we then escrow a certain amount of that to also be held to ensure that those public improvements are made to standard. It is then only after the developer has provided an indication that they are complete, the county will then go out, inspect those sites, and then this department would release those monies only after it has been completed. Unfortunately, there have been occurrences in the past where those, developer isn't quite able to finish what they do. So what happens with that money is the county does have certain abilities to hold on to that money. And if a developer sort of falls through or development falls through, the county holds on to that money so that subsequently that money can be used only for the purposes of sort of redoing the public improvements for that development. So that happens, but not very frequently, thankfully. Additionally, we do issue home daycare licenses. So we have a planning technician in the Department of Planning, and home daycare is defined in the zoning ordinance as a residential home in which 10 or fewer children, are kept during normal daycare hours. So we do have a staff member. She processes their applications. She goes out and makes sure that the homes are safe. And it's a task that she really enjoys doing and that she does a great job at. And, it's an important task to ensure that these home daycares are safe for children to go to. We also do outreach and planning in targeted communities. So as an example right now, up in Spanish Lake, the Spanish Lake CDC is working on a plan for a corridor. I don't want to call it a corridor. It's sort of a town center plan is what they're calling it. They're at Bell Fountain and Parker Road. So it is initiated by the CDC. However, county staff and county planning staff are part of the steering committee and assisting with outreach to the community there to assist with the creation and implementation, hopeful future implementation of some of their plan recommendations. The department also conducts corridor and small area studies. Again, we're the liaison to the Boundary Commission, and we respond to a steady stream of citizen inquiries about development. What can they do with their properties? How do they subdivide? How do they consolidate parcels? Anything of that sort of nature. So some of the performance metrics that this department uses, we've been historically using some workload types of metrics, just numbers of how many petitions are we processing, in terms of how many variances are going from the Board of Zoning Adjustment, how many people are coming to the Planning Commission requesting changes in zoning or requesting a special use or a special procedure, and how many subdivisions are we seeing. Anecdotally, I will tell you that right at the very beginning of COVID, a lot of that dried up. There was basically everyone pulled the plug on what they were doing. But now for the last several months, at least since nearly the beginning of this year, it's almost been like there's been a sort of a fire hose has sort of been released, and there are lots and lots of projects in the department, especially ones that you all wouldn't necessarily see because they're not requests for special procedure. They're sort of the standard permitted uses, requests for standard site development plans that that staff works through. So before I get to 2022, I want to talk a little bit about some of the big changes that happened in the planning department in 2021. I think the biggest one is we did do some personnel restructuring. Over several decades, the department's ability and its capacity to conduct work outside the charter mandated zoning and subdivision matters had been reduced. So across the board, budgeting cuts did lead to subsequent losses in staff. So I went back to some of our annual reports and I know it's sort of like green apples versus red apples, but in 2002, we had 51 named staff in our annual report. In 2012, we had 41 named staff. And the budget request that we make today requests 13.5 full-time equivalents in 2022. So the department has seen a significant reduction in human power and what it can do. And that's a big deal for a department that nearly every single year, we are usually 90% plus personnel. This year's different, and we'll get to that in just a second. But 2021 presented also, I think, an opportunity for the department to sort of reorient itself and sort of rethink about what it had before it and what kinds of capacity it really had. So we saw the retirement of 3 very long-time county employees, one of whom had been the previous acting director, one of whom had been our planning supervisor, and one of them has been our office manager. Combined, those 3 individuals represented more than a century of devotion and work for St. Louis County when you combine all 3 of their years of service. So we saw a significant number of losses to the department. But what that then does is that provided us the opportunity to sort of reorient and say, how do we realign our human resources with the goals of what we have and what we want to do? So some of the work that I've been able and lucky and privileged to do is sort of rethink about that. So you had a department a year ago in which we had 3 administrative staff. Subsequently, I've been able to, one of those individuals has been able to be promoted to a planning technician where she operates and works on the technical processes for the Planning Commission. And what that then does is that then relieves a planner from having to intake applications and read legal descriptions. That then frees up the planner to do sort of more in-depth analysis type of work. Additionally, we've been able to hire 3 new planners, and I am very thankful. Most of the planning department is in the room with you right now. That is the majority of staff in the Department of Planning behind me, and I appreciate them coming down to listen, because I do believe that information asymmetry is not great. I think that everything should be open to everyone, not only to residents, but also to county employees. And I like having staff really informed about the budget request, because from them can come really innovative ideas that a leader themselves may not think about. And they've been really stepping up to the plate and saying, oh, if we, what can we do if we have this, this little bit of money? What's something really innovative and interesting? And it's been really, I think, been really helpful for our department. So you can see here also there is an org chart. There is a director of planning. I am operating as the acting director. I am actually, I'm a planning manager who is operating as the acting director. And there is another planning manager. And below the managers are planners, we have an intermittent planner, planning technicians. And then there is also an office supervisor. So jumping into the 2022 budget request, the overall request is $2,237,048. And that represents an increase of $1,108,742. I will say that the vast majority, $1 million of that, is a one-time request to fund the professional services needed to engage with consultants to help with a new general plan for St. Louis County. And you can see here from the pie chart, 50% of the request for 2022 is staff and benefits, 45% is general plan, and 5% is our operating expenses. So what does approximately $2.2 million fund? Well, it funds 8 planning positions. That includes a director, managers, and planners of various levels. These staff members all hold a master's degree in urban planning, public administration, or some form of related profession. It also funds 2 planning technicians who oversee the technical processes for the Planning Commission and the Board of Zoning Adjustment. So those individuals ensure that applications are complete. They schedule public hearings. They do all the sort of technical side of those tasks to free planners from having to engage in some of that technical work. It also funds an office supervisor and an intern. Our new office supervisor has been with our department for several years. She's a longtime county staff member. And we have consolidated down to 1 administrative staff person, and she does all of the administrative work for our department at this point. And it also funds an intern, which allows us to help grow the next generation of public servants and urban planners by giving us an opportunity to bring a university student into the department in 2022 and sort of show them what does it mean to be a public sector planner. It also funds our operating expenses. And that's going to cover things like our public notification costs. So the way that this department notifies individuals of actions is for the Planning Commission. We do send out postcards to every single property within 1,000 feet of a parcel. We also send out postcards to every subdivision trustee that we have in our database within a 1 mile radius. Mel, is that correct? 1 mile? Half mile, excuse me, within a half-mile radius of any petition. Additionally, we do notice our requests in the St. Louis Countian, and we are also looking and talking about what does it look like when we have larger requests, and maybe even put it in higher and other newspapers as well, because we really love having people come to our public hearings and say, I heard about it X way. I really hate it when I hear people say, I didn't know what was going on. I mean, I genuinely do. And then additionally, it funds $1 million for the professional services that are needed to assist with the completion of a general plan. So, what is a general plan? A general plan, also known as a comprehensive plan or a land use plan, is a document designed to guide future actions of a community. It presents the future, it presents a vision for the future with long-range goals and objectives for activities that affect the local government. This includes guidance on how to make decisions on public and private land development proposals and other issues of pressing concern. Most plans are written to provide direction for future activities over a 20 or longer year period. These are really generational types of documents that you create. However, plans should receive a considered review and update every 5 years. And in fact, the St. Louis County Charter, inside of it includes that very stipulation that a general plan should be adopted and then reconsidered every 5 years. The last time that St. Louis County adopted a general plan was 1980. And the most recent, we did a 1985 general plan update. So these documents they're actually really interesting to read through and talk about, because the county knew in 1980 a lot of the problems that we're looking at today. So they're really great historical documents to sort of peruse through and look at and these are compilations, not just of the planning department. This is a document that requires really all levels of county government to be involved in. And it's a document that requires stakeholders from across the spectrum: residents, developers, council, departments in county government, the executive's office. Basically, everyone has to have some sort of stake in what does the general plan say. Because at its best, general plans are best used then when they're created and then help it to be sort of a guideway and a sort of a roadmap for government to use. I mean, general plans serve multiple functions, and these are not exhaustive, but through public dialogue, residents are able to express a collective vision for the future. It shapes the appearance and design of the community. It promotes economic development that is equitable, just, and sustainable. And also it justifies future zoning and planning decisions. So like I said, the county last adopted a general plan in 1980 with its last major revision occurring in 1985. It no longer reflects the will, desire, or reality of St. Louis County. I would note that in the last 50 years, St. Louis County has seen only marginal increase in its population. In 1970, our population was 951,000 residents. In 2020, we had 1,004,000 residents. In 50 years, we have gained about 50,000 residents. However, in the 50 years since 1970, we have consumed a significant amount of land for development. And that presents both a host of, people do it for a lot of really understandable reasons. People want to live in larger single-family detached homes on larger lots. However, there is a fiscal reality to the cost of development. And I think that some of the conversations that occur around the fiscal situation, and by the way, this is a national conversation. These are national issues. You know, have a lot of bearing in terms of how we develop has a lot of bearing on the fiscal questions that we have to answer as a people through our government. So, you know, if you think about it, there's the vast majority of subdivisions that get approved with single-family detached homes don't produce the taxes that are required to fund all of the services. So when you start doing that over and over and over again, it starts to sort of, the ball of wax starts to get harder and harder to sort of disentangle. So the way that government and the way that development frequently operates is that usually commercial and industrial uses fund more and residential funds less. And I think that there's really great philosophical and really great policy reasons why that's really the national standard. But I think it really invites a lot of questions about what does development look like? What do we want development in St. Louis County to look like? At its core, the zoning ordinance was adopted in 1965, and it has seen significant revisions since that time. However, at its heart, it is still a mid-20th century document that could be updated to reflect a 21st century mindset about where the people of St. Louis County, where they want to go and how they want to see their community look and grow and thrive. So with that, I thank you very much for the opportunity to describe some of this. And this is sort of just the tip of the iceberg of what the Department of Planning does. But I would thank you for your time and any questions that you may have.
Any questions? Councilman Harder.
Okay, thank you. Jacob, right?
Mhm.
Okay. Is there any move afoot to get a permanent full-time director in your department?
I am none aware. I am aware that they are continually looking, but I have not heard that they have selected anyone.
Okay, does the budget that you presented reflect that, or placeholder for that new director?
Yes, it does. The salaries do include for a director.
Okay. What interaction does your department have with the other 90 municipalities in St. Louis County?
Sure. So we are in reality, we are the planning department for the single largest sort of jurisdiction in our region. We serve 315,000 unincorporated residents. And so we operate as the local planning department for those 315,000 residents. But our tasks are at this point really focused on the unincorporated residents. Now, during our analyses of certain zoning petitions, if we do have a request that is adjacent to a municipal boundary, we do take that into consideration. And there is a world, it's almost going back to the future. Decades ago, and decades, I mean 50, 60 years ago, St. Louis County its planning department used to engage with municipalities through administration of planning and zoning and munis. And we've pulled back for a good 50, 60, I mean, don't hold me to the exact years, but it's been a long time. But I've looked at what might it look like some of our lower capacity municipalities that really struggle with planning and zoning in their munis to partner with them. I don't know what that looks like yet, but there have definitely been conversations about that kind of.
Could that be an outreach that you could provide that service for a fee and help your budget at the same time?
What I would say about that is that very question is some of what we've been sort of kicking around. What could that look like? My response to that would be is that I think that anything that we would do would be neutral. That it would be, we would do things on a sliding scale for the municipality. And this is, I don't know how it would play out. So there's lots of options on the table. Whether you would have you could theoretically have a contract with the municipality, or who would fund it themselves, or who would, you would receive fees from a developer in one way or another. This is very theoretical, and we've merely had just conversations. This hasn't gone anywhere.
I guess I would challenge you, just like our police department does contract work for a lot of municipalities. I guess I would challenge you as a way, since you're not a profit center, at least cover your costs and be able to work on, have some revenue coming into your department by doing those functions. Also, have you consulted with any munis or have they come to you to help, I guess, go through the idea of consolidation? Like if two municipalities want to consolidate into one, do they consult with your department, or they just do their own thing?
So they don't typically come to the county first. They typically will, the conversations when I find out about them are usually coming from the St. Louis County Boundary Commission. So they're usually having conversations with the executive director. Her name is Michelle Doherty. So Ms. Doherty will frequently let me know if there have been any sort of conversations, or if they've had any sort of documentation coming in for any sort of municipal actions. I do know that, and it was pulled back. It was on their docket for the most recent one was either in 2020 or 2021. It was Normandy and Glen Echo Park were interested in a consolidation, and then the two municipalities have pulled back from that subsequently. But that is typically the way that we find out for those types of questions is from the St. Louis County Boundary Commission, because they really are the body that sort of makes these recommendations and sort of starts with them, who then comes to us so that this department can sort of articulate the county's response, or the sort of county's comment on any sort of municipal boundary actions.
I guess my idea there is that if say 2 or 3 municipalities want to join together, they don't know how to do that, and they don't know how to maybe put together or see if that's a good thing or a bad thing. Would your department be involved or want to get involved in that discussion to advise those municipalities on what that would look like, either consolidated or they stay on their own?
That's an interesting question. I can't give you a direct answer because I've not been that hasn't sort of come to us, because typically the municipalities work together without coming to the county first. So, and then they typically will reach out to Ms. Doherty because she has some skills and she has some capacity to sort of help show them what it is that they could be doing, or what sorts of analyses that they need to be doing to sort of look at this. Sort of tangentially related, I do get requests because the county is sort of a higher capacity. We are a higher capacity form of government, and we have a lot of capacity just countywide in general to help sort of smaller munis. They do sometimes ask us for maps to do mapping work for municipalities. Sometimes the municipal league will sometimes, they'll come to me first, even though the questions really should be directed at this point to like Courtney Corman, who is the county's chief information officer, about I think the most recent one was there are some munis that are looking at the 2020 census and how do they reapportion, and can the county help us do some mapping work. So I've had, I know that those types of requests come to my department, and then we usually will help shepherd those to the individual who can help them the most.
Okay. And finally, I know Councilman Webb is trying to work with the idea of eliminating or reducing liquor licenses in the 4th district. Have you been involved in any of those discussions or planning, or how that would look going forward?
So there have been some very initial conversations. From what I understand, Councilwoman Webb had a conversation with me, I don't know, maybe 6 months ago, and talking about looking at examples from the city in the creation of special use districts. The zoning ordinance in St. Louis County doesn't permit for the establishment of special use districts in the same way that St. Louis cities does. So she was looking at some really great examples of planning and zoning interventions that the city has done. And so what the city has done in the establishment of these special use districts is they have, they're exercising their power of the police power through zoning to create special overlay districts. So what the Board of Aldermen did, and this was maybe 5 or 6 years ago, maybe, the Board of Aldermen basically created a framework for how these special use districts could be created. It is then up to an alderperson's discretion to then, establish a special use district, which then would sort of, depending on the special use district, could then, present special rules in terms of how land is used, or certain rules on certain types of uses, things of that nature. But the county zoning ordinance there is no such trigger to create those. So we chatted with her about that process, that it would be it's not a sprint. It would be a marathon types of conversations that has multiple steps and would really incorporate a whole host of stakeholders before that conversation would go much farther. But I know she's been very concerned about the proliferation of alcohol outlets. We are mindful of that too. So when we have we are very mindful of alcohol sales in general in all of our C8 districts. So all of our planned use districts that could theoretically include the sale of alcohol. We're very mindful of that, but that's a very, site specific, piece by piece type of analysis.
So to follow up on that, so when a liquor license is up for renewal, does that process go through your department
No,
at all?
that is through revenue department is where that actually occurs.
So you're not ever asked, hey, is this a good use, or is this something we should consider either renewing or ending?
Correct. We do not have, we are not one of the sort of approval process parts of that process.
Okay, thank you.
Councilwoman Clancy.
Yes. Good afternoon, and congratulations on your promotion to acting director. I think last time you came and talked to us, you had a different position, and you have big shoes to fill. We all miss Gail. So a couple comments. So, I guess I'm surprised to see in your performance measures that your actuals for 2020 aren't lower, because I just know that there were some things with COVID that slowed things down, but it doesn't seem like, at the end of the day that made a huge difference.
There was
So
a
just
little bit of
comment.
there was sort of a compression sort of deal. Like
Okay.
there was a real drop off and a real swoon at the beginning, and then it sort of picked back up
Okay.
closer to the end of the year.
Yeah, I think that says a lot about the work you all do despite some challenges as we've all faced. I'm really interested in this general plan, and I just want to make sure I heard it right. First of all, I would love to thumb through that old
I have a
copy.
I actually had Mel, bless her heart, she
no,
literally,
scan it
we had a
all?
couple copies of these, and we had to pull them apart, and she scanned each sheet one by one. So I actually have PDFs of these.
Thank you.
If
I would love that.
I-
I like looking through that kind of stuff, and I think you're right. I think our problems and challenges have just kind of been recycled over the years, but they're not necessarily new, unfortunately. But I want to make sure I understood this. So the last plan was in 1980, and there was a major revision in 1985. You say in one of the slides that a best practice, to at least review it every 5 years. Have you all not even been able to review it every 5 years?
No, the general plan has not been reviewed through the Planning Commission or the department in a significant period of time.
Okay, and I presume then your budget includes 1 million or so for that?
Yes.
There would be a competitive RFP process,
Correct.
and are there national firms
There
that
are.
would be courted for this, or not courted, I guess, but that
This would be,
interested?
from my perspective, I
Yeah.
think that this would be, if it was allocated, this would be a very desirable project for people to work on. We are a unique jurisdiction. We are with unique challenges, unique strengths,
Yeah.
but unique challenges as well. And I think that I think that it would be very competitive. I think we'd get a lot of interest for this degree of work. And also for working in St. Louis County. I think it would
And
be competitive.
we have a lot of plans, right? Whether they exist here formally, birthed through St. Louis County government or from the community. I imagine this would take into account some of the other plans that have been created or in the process of being created. I know that there's an equity plan that's being created right now, or there's been some community engagement around. I don't know what the status of the county's just general strategic plan is, but this would, how does what you're
How does all
envisioning
this
fit in?
interplay?
Yeah.
So all of these have to talk together. So as part of any general plan, adoption process, there would sort of be sort of a lot of upfront analysis and a lot of upfront looking at what are all the plans that we have, and what is, and what are we hearing? Because there would be a significant outreach to residents, developers, everyone. And what are we hearing from people? What's important to them? And so that would be part of the process. All of these documents, this would be an opportunity for all of these documents to sort of start to maybe talk to each other through this general plan. What I would say is it's almost advantageous. If you can pick a silver lining out of the dark cloud of the pandemic, is that this is almost a really natural place for any government to sort of look at doing this type of work. We've seen a lot of trends in planning and zoning that were sort of like slow drips and drabs, and then all of a sudden sort of exploded during COVID. The easiest one is sort of the loss of commercial space. I mean, you see throughout our commercial corridors significant vacancies in certain parts of the county, and so a document like this would sort of attempt and ask questions about what do we want those to look like? If we're really realistic and really honest, if we say, I don't actually think a new Kmart, there's no next Kmart that's going to fill this shopping center. What do we do with it? If we don't want, just to sort of smile and sort of laugh at some of the stuff out, if you don't want self-storage everywhere, kind of thing, because that's a really easy, but that doesn't work forever. So what's the community really want to say about where it's going?
Yeah, we've got car washes, urgent cares, self-storage.
It's funny how planning and zoning, it's funny how they go in cycles. You definitely see cycles of different uses.
Do you, I think you were here for our sobering presentation from Mr. Kreidler. We've got some real challenges, and I imagine that it would be easy for people to say, well, this general plan seems like a nice to have. We could shave $1 million off. What's at risk if we were to do that?
Sure. So what I would say is that we are at a natural point to be able to sort of take real stock of where we are. What are our challenges? What are our strengths? We've got significant strengths in St. Louis County. So how do we leverage those? We're a redevelopment county. We're not St. Charles County. We're not Jeffco. We don't have the open greenfield. So we have a unique set of challenges. But how do we leverage our sort of locational value that we have? We're close to really the biggest employment centers in our region are really within reach for us here in St. Louis County. How do we do some of that? And also, what would ultimately hopefully happen in the best case world is that the general plan is not the end. The general plan is sort of the beginning, because what you can do is then you can say, look, we have, I'm just going to pull an example that is real or not real. Look, we have all of these subdivisions where we have subdivision street designs that are so wide, and we know that every square foot of pavement costs us a certain number of dollars every year. Why do we need to have that as our standard? Other jurisdictions may have smaller streets that are perfectly safe. Now, do not like this, we'd have to balance lots of things. Safety, accessibility. You'd be balancing a whole lot of things. It's an opportunity for the county to relook at some of these types of questions and say, maybe the balance has changed since we established these standards. Maybe we want to have something slightly different so that a generation or 2 generations from now, the county may look different in all the best ways, hopefully.
Well, I'll leave it at that for now. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Fitch.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Jacob, question for you about the Boundary Commission. Do you all get involved when the like a voluntary annexation comes across? Do you get involved in voluntary annexation?
Voluntary?
You know what I'm talking about, where the property owner wants to go into a city and the city wants to take them in?
Yes, we do. So there is a procedure that is permitted in state statute. So and this procedure only applies to residentially zoned parcels or to like common ground or like agriculturally zoned parcels or rights of way. So, and it's really only intended, this process is usually only intended for like one-off parcels. So say a parcel is immediately adjacent to a municipality, they want to join the muni, the muni says, great. So then we facilitate that. So the way that that happens is the municipality, usually their council will then pass an ordinance taking that in. We then do a very short review where we send that request around to county departments, make sure that there is no sort of concerns about service provision, and then ultimately it comes to the council to.
And my reason is Pacific's doing that. They're taking bite by bite by bite by bite by bite. And I've not seen anything from you all saying, here's the impact on St. Louis County.
So the reason for that being is that state statute actually carves out a special exemption for municipalities that provide sewer and water on their own. So therefore, Eureka and Pacific are able to annex unincorporated St. Louis County unilaterally, parcel by parcel. It is,
Do they have to be?
to my consternation.
Do they have to be providing that water and sewer service, or is it just because they have water and sewer service?
That's a question that I don't know whether has been, litigated and determined.
I mean, I
It's-
get it. If there's an unincorporated parcel and they're providing water and sewer to that parcel, then they want to come into the city. But if it's just because they happen to have their own water and sewer, now they can annex all this stuff unilaterally
Mhm.
with no input. I guess we have to pass an ordinance to allow it though, right?
No.
Oh, we don't. They can
Nope,
do it on
it's
their own.
received and filed.
So why are they even coming to us with these requests?
It's received and filed so that I believe it's just to receive and file to inform the county that they have done this and that for the county to update its maps.
Yeah.
So typically, because I laugh about that because Mel was showing me the most recent one, which I think was just last month from the city of
Yeah.
Pacific.
So Valley Park has come to me twice now asking to a voluntary annexation, and
Okay.
I've refused to
Mhm.
engage because it impacts the unincorporated area
Mhm.
around it. So they cannot force that on us because they don't have their own
Correct. They
water and
cannot.
sewer.
Mhm.
Okay, now I understand the difference.
Mhm.
Okay, and then remember when Pacific said we're gonna do a footprint annexation all the way down Highway 66 and take in the prison?
And taken, that was, yes, and that was.
So we
several
get the
years ago.
head count and we get the sales tax dollars because the head count at the prison, we lost significant amount of revenue there. Was there no way for us to, you probably don't remember this, you were probably in high school maybe, you know?
I don't know if that's the case, but.
Yeah. Well, it's been about 20 years ago, so, you know,
Okay.
yeah.
I have been, the information about that has been relayed to me about how that occurred. It's in state statute and, whether the states, whether the, power, if anyone would like to lobby, to sort of amend the state statutes, I think that the planning department would be happy to see that.
Are those the only two municipalities? Eureka,
Those are the only
Pacific?
two.
Okay, all right, thank you. That's
Yes.
all I have, Madam Chair.
Thank you. I wanted to ask a couple of questions about your, are you anticipating any retirements?
This year, I have asked and I have been told that I should not be anticipating any retirements. this
Okay,
year.
because I'm looking at a 1.1 increase in staff and benefits.
So what you will see is that in 2021, we were allocated 14.3 full-time equivalents and we're at 13.5. But you then wonder, well, why has the number gone up? Because what has happened is that through the personnel sort of restructuring process, I'm hopeful to be allocated the funds to establish another planner position. The rationale behind that is that I have three planners here behind me, and they are the sort of front line for all planning and zoning work for a jurisdiction of 315,000 unincorporated residents. And as we hope and look to a future in which we will be working on a general plan in conjunction with a consulting firm and in conjunction with the people of St. Louis County to do such a plan, I'm hopeful to get another staff person to sort of help with that really hard. It's going to be a big workload for us. So there's been a reshuffling of the types of jobs that's in the Department of Planning. And so I think what you're seeing is the reason that there's a somewhat of a cost increase is because I have sort of reshuffled and hoped that I can get a planner out of changing some job categories.
Okay, did you lose anyone when, I guess you all don't do the CDBG funds anymore, is that correct?
That is correct.
And so how many people did you lose with that?
I don't, when the Office of Community Development did leave the Department of Planning in 19 or 20, that was a significant number. I don't remember how many people that was. 20, 25, I mean, it was a significant number.
Okay.
And I can follow up if it's.
No, that's okay. I just wanted to make sure that was part of why you did not have as many people. And the last thing I want to know, did you make an ARPA request?
I'm sorry.
Did you make an ARPA request?
So I did request, or the discussion, that's actually where the general plan discussion got its legs. Because I think that this is as part of the pandemic recovery for St. Louis County, I think that a new general plan would be a really critical, could be a really critical and sort of clarifying activity for the people to engage in.
Okay, so the last thing I want to ask, and I want to make sure I'm specific about Councilman Harder, and he's asking about Councilwoman Webb's concern. And so the implementation of a special use district or an overlay district, are you still looking to do that somewhat, or are you just kind of thinking that that's kind of way in the future?
Well, I think that could be and would actually quite honestly be a part of a conversation around general plans and inside of a general plan that then would perhaps have policy recommendations out of it. And in a theoretical world, one of the policy recommendations could be such as creating the framework for the establishment of special use districts. Could be a natural outcropping of a general plan type of situation. At this point, it's very much on the back burner. We've done some sort of front research, particularly on what the city of St. Louis has done, because planning and zoning law is really based in sort of your state statutes. So you can see what other states are doing, but you really need to know really what your state is saying. And so we're looking at how the city had done that because they're clearly using Missouri statutes. But that's something that's definitely on our back burner. But it in and of itself will be a very I'm sure it will generate lots of conversation. Not only about the establishment of special use districts in general, each discrete one, but just creating the framework itself.
Thank you. Is that Councilman Harder?
Yes, thank you. Couple things back on staff. So you said you're right at 13 right now?
So we are requesting 13.5 full-time equivalents. I think I have 15 positions, and then that trickles down to 13.5.
Okay.
And that includes intermittents and things like that.
And a director in there.
Yes, the director is in there.
Okay. And to follow up on what Councilman Days talked about, so you lost that community development group was part of planning for a while, you said?
Yes. So the Office of Community Development was transferred out of the Department of Planning into the Department of Human Services, I believe. So that occurred recently. And in the time since I've been with the county, which was I accepted the position with St. Louis County in 2015. When I started with St. Louis County, the planning department was two divisions. It had a current planning division. And so current planning was really the planners that were sort of focused on staffing the planning commission, doing subdivisions, that kind of standard work. But we also had a comprehensive planning division that had a whole staff of planners that were looking at sort of corridor studies, long range questions. That's the division that this plan came out of. It's the division that, there are lots of area studies. There's an area study for Lee May. There's some Afton studies. There's some North County various studies, and that was the division of the planning department that used to conduct those types of things. In 2015, that division was essentially removed and never replaced. So since that time, the department has lost, just in the time since I've been here, we've lost all of our comprehensive planners, and we've lost our OCD colleagues. And really been distilled down to what used to be current planning, which is then why I took 2021 as an opportunity to say, okay, at that point, some very well-loved staff members that had sort of been the old guard were leaving, and it's time to sort of, because basically everyone at that point was new. I mean, all of the planners in here have been hired within the last 6 months. So there's been a significant sort of learning curve in the Department of Planning as well. So yes.
Yeah. So on the bid for your plan, you've got about $1 million.
Correct.
Is that, did you shop that around just to get raw numbers? How did you come up with that?
So the way that I did that was I sort of just started doing some research and sort of asking questions of people that I knew about for a jurisdiction our size and sort of the type of plan that we're wanting. This is sort of a rough number. It is a one-time request. So in 2023, the budget request, God willing, won't include an additional request for professional services unless there's some sort of lingering sort of something, but I don't foresee that. But at this point, I have not sent out anything. This is really just, was just my own research on sort of the rough numbers.
So will that plan be totally just for unincorporated St. Louis County, or will you get input or results for munis and their participation, or could they participate? in that?
So that's a question that we've been kicking around the planning department. What exactly do we cover? It's kind of one of the important questions when your jurisdiction has 88 municipalities in such a large unincorporated area. So this would really function, I think, primarily for unincorporated St. Louis County. However, you can't extract the municipalities from this question. But there are sort of jurisdictional questions about, the county the county council is not going to adopt a plan that sort of encumbers a municipality. That's, it's a zoning and planning question that the municipalities are afforded to themselves. So we intend to look at doing research for the municipalities, sort of because these questions cross municipal lines. But at its core, it would sort of serve foundationally for unincorporated St. Louis County.
Because you can't do this in a vacuum with
Correct,
so many
absolutely
other
not.
municipalities involved, especially if it's a big change like street width or
Sure,
or
absolutely.
sewers or whatever. Also, what is the current population of unincorporated?
So I don't know, Mel would probably tell me exactly, but it's approximately 315,000. And we did that recently based on the 2020 census numbers. So unincorporated population has kind of mirrors the county. It's been relatively flat because in 2010, I think it was like 312,000. So we're still in the general same ballpark.
Okay, so we're pretty much flat growth
Mhm.
for at least the last 10 years.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Any other questions? All right. Thank you so very much. Appreciate your presentation. Chris? Thank you. Moving on to public comment. Do we have anyone?
No, Madam Chair, we do not.
Thank you very much. All right. Motion to adjourn?
So move.
Second?
Second.
All in favor, please say aye. Those
Aye.
opposed, no. Motion carries. See y'all